It's an exciting day. I'm in my truck and I'm ready to pull out of the garage at the JAG-K office for my first road trip of the 21 school year for this episode of Coffee with Chuck. Today, I am headed to Manhattan to have a conversation with Jill Shields. Jill is the Deputy Athletics Director at Kansas State University. She has been there for 21 years in various roles, but she is basically the number 2 person in the K-State Athletics Department and has a number of responsibilities. We will discuss those with her. And she has an interesting career path, mostly spent in athletics, but also in college admissions at Wichita State University. I knew her when she was in college, and we'll get into that a little bit more in our discussion, but I'm really excited to not only see Jill, because we've been friends for a long time but kind of lost touch with each other for a couple decades. But I'm excited to get out of the office and actually go talk to some people in person. I'm hoping, and we will know obviously by the end of this video, if I can, to stop by Manhattan High School and see if I can visit with some students in our Manhattan JAG-K programs, or at least visit with our career specialists there. That would be great because I haven't met either one of them in person. All right, we're on the road to Manhattan, and I just got confirmation from Jade Anderson, one of our Manhattan High career specialists, that she has classes this afternoon. Unfortunately, I will miss the morning classes, but I will have a chance to visit with some JAG-K students today, and they have a really cool project or activity they're doing today. So I look forward to visiting with them and finding out how their year's gone, and it'll be a fun time. So that's good. And I said the first visit this year, I think earlier. This is the first classroom visit this calendar year. I think this is my second total visit this year. So obviously a much lower number than normal, but this has not been a normal school year. So I'm going to focus on driving, and I'll check in a little bit later. Okay, I am here with Jill Shields, the Deputy Athletics Director at Kansas State University, and a friend of mine from a long time ago. I'm older, she is not. But I'm really excited to be here with Jill to talk a lot about her career path, but also what's happening at Kansas State University with the athletics department, her career path, some of the challenges that some of our student athletes may have now getting on this Division I path, and advice that she could give potential student athletes, because she was a Division I college athlete herself in women's basketball. And she's just done a lot of things. So Jill, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Happy to visit with you, Chuck.
And actually, I say thank you for being here. We're actually in her office. So thank you for inviting me to be here. And we're overlooking the Bill Snyder Family Stadium. And so it's a great view from Jill's office. We won't talk about football because I'm a KU alum. So anyway, let's start by just telling us a little bit about your background. I know you grew up in this area, or at least went to southeast of Saline, and tell us kind of about your progression to where you are, what your dreams were, what you thought you wanted to do at that time, and kind of how the path actually laid out.
Sure. No, absolutely. Small town Kansas girl, grew up just south of Salina in a little town called Assaria, Kansas, and went to Southeast Saline High School. Was the daughter to two educators. My dad was actually my high school principal, and my mom was also a teacher down the road in Lindsborg, Kansas. So they were both small town Kansas farm kids. So I'm kind of the product of two small town Kansas farmers, I guess you would say. But went to small school, enjoyed the small school atmosphere where you could be really, really involved with things and really just shared life during my school years with three brothers, and really always just thought I wanted to also follow the path of my parents and be a teacher. Always thought I was going to be a physical education teacher and coach, and kind of followed that path a little bit, but also knew I wanted to play basketball. I loved athletics. I loved sports. Was very fortunate in my middle school, high school years to have really good teachers and coaches that cared a lot about just developing people and not so much athletes, but just developing people and being good role models. And had the opportunity to go to a school to play basketball as I was graduating from high school. And actually where I met Chuck was at the University of Kansas. So that's where I initially went to college and played for Marion, Washington, and that's where I began playing. And then ended up leaving at one point and graduated from the University of Central Florida down in Orlando. But had the opportunity to, see a lot of different things through college and in those years, and have the opportunity to really be around folks who I aspired to be like, and decided I wanted to be a coach at the collegiate level, and did that for a couple of years. As I graduated from the University of Central Florida, I was a liberal arts major. After spending many years in the College of Education, I graduated with a liberal arts degree, decided I wanted to go into coaching, and was a graduate assistant for a couple of years at the University of Central Florida, and North Georgia College is where I got my master's degree. So that was a great opportunity to live in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, and beautiful place to go to school. And kind of after that, coached for a number of years before transitioning out of coaching. And I knew that after a number of years in collegiate coaching that I wanted to get married and have a family, and really decided at that point that maybe it's best to make a move out of coaching, but I knew that I wanted to stay in collegiate athletics. So I had an opportunity at Kansas State to become the academic counselor for our women's basketball team and our baseball team. So I kind of entered collegiate athletics outside of coaching through student athlete services. And that was a great avenue for me, really an opportunity to give back to student athletes, kind of pour into them as people outside of their day-to-day life as a student athlete, just helping them with their life ambition, their career path, what they wanted to do, and really, really enjoyed those years. I did that for about 11 years, and had the opportunity to work also then with Coach Snyder in the football program for 7 years, and really enjoyed that opportunity to work with those young guys, that really were terrific student athletes. Obviously the majority of them knew what they wanted to do, but some of them didn't, and some of them simply wanted to needed some guidance, some direction as far as maybe which career path they wanted to take and what they wanted to do once they graduated from college. So, that was kind of pre-administration years. Also had an opportunity to work in student athlete development for a couple of years and did our student athlete advisory committee, had that group of student athletes, which was our leadership team, and kind of the leaders from each team that meet monthly and do a lot of different things within the athletic department.
I'm really interested also to know right now what your responsibilities are as deputy athletic director. Well, just tell us what your current role is and what I don't know that there's a typical day. But
no, as deputy athletic director, it's kind of a different day every day. My main responsibilities are really as a chief operating officer in really assisting Gene Taylor, our athletic director, with the day-to-day operations of the athletic department. I'm the sports supervisor for football, volleyball, and women's basketball. So I work really closely with those coaches, teams, those directors of operations as far as, they may have questions on their day-to-day travel with their competition scheduling. I assist with football scheduling. There may be just the day-to-day personnel issues or student athlete issues that they have. And that's a big piece of what I do. A lot of times it ends up being the issues, maybe their HR issues, personnel issues that we may have. But it's really trying to assist all of our staff with anything that they may need on a day-to-day basis.
What was the best preparation for this job? Clearly you've had a lot of experiences, but if there were 2 or 3 things that you could narrow it down to, like what are the best qualities to help you be most successful in your current job?
Yeah, I think in working with the coaches and the student athletes, I think my experience as a coach was is very beneficial to me on a day-to-day basis. I think also just having been a student athlete, I think it helps in the communication with our student athletes. There's times that they come in and they may want to talk about an issue or a problem that they have. And it's a lot easier to relate to them. It's a lot easier to relate to the coaches when I've been in that role. So I think just the background of being a coach, being an athlete, has certainly been beneficial.
Looking at it from another angle, when you're looking to hire someone or you're helping with some of the HR activities, what are you looking for in a person that you want to hire for the athletic department here at K-State?
Yeah. I think some of the things that I look for is someone that's been a part of some type of team. And that doesn't necessarily mean an athletic team, but I think sometimes even an individual, if we're looking for student help, maybe it's someone that's, maybe they've been a part of a band or drama or something, but you want to hire someone that's been a part of something that's bigger than themselves and where they've had to work together as part of a team. So I think that's one of the main things we look for. We certainly look at work ethic. Obviously when you are looking to hire someone, they need to be intelligent. They need to have experience in the area that you're looking to hire. But I think someone that's personable, someone that wants to fit in, someone that wants to put their roots down at K-State, we really look hard at those things too. we're looking for someone that has the same vision that we have, that wants to operate ethically and morally, and they want to do things the right way. They want to, see our student athletes be successful and our coaches be successful, but they want to go about it in the correct manner and want to be part of a team that cares about others more than they care about themselves.
And so is that the same, and you probably can't speak for every sport, although you're certainly involved with all of them in some way, but what about student athletes making the transition from high school to college? What best prepares a student to basically, I mean, this is a job. Division
Yeah.
One athletics is a
Yeah.
job. So certainly I would guess you want someone who's a good teammate, or most coaches would like
Right.
that. But what are some of the other skills that you think help prepare a student, whether it's for a Division One athletic team or even a college student in a new
Yeah.
environment?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, because I think sometimes I don't think there's anything that can prepare a student athlete for what's ahead of them with Division One athletics. But I certainly think a lot of times it's the success of those transitioning freshmen. It kind of depends on the type of program they were in high school and the leadership they've had from their coach at the high school level. I think any type of strong team building that they've had, where the center of attention always has not been on them, is certainly helpful. I think any time that they've had to consume or have the role of being a mentor themselves and not just being the star student athlete is very beneficial to them. Certainly someone with a really strong work ethic is crucial. Someone that's disciplined, that's pretty important, because it is so structured at this level. While it's 20 hours per week that our coaches work with our student athletes, that's a lot, and it's a pretty intense 20 hours a week. So I think those that can be disciplined, that have worked hard, that want to be good teammates, those are typically the more successful student athletes. And those that have really prepared their bodies, and they, if you want to get even further into it, those that have been in the weight room a lot, they've conditioned a lot, they're prepared not only physically but mentally for the workouts. It's pretty important, but it's a big adjustment period, and I think most of our coaches realize that freshman year, it's not an easy year typically.
And I would especially think this past year, given COVID and all of the changes and restrictions. How many years have you been in your current position?
Yeah, my role as deputy athletic director, I'm in my 4th year.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you've had maybe 2 or 3 regular years.
Right.
Can you just tell us a little bit about how your world was probably turned upside down dealing with COVID-19?
Yeah. No, COVID was really, it did completely turn our world upside down. There was no NCAA manual for how you operate with COVID. I was actually going to Indianapolis from the Big 12 tournament last March as part of the women's basketball selection committee, to do the selection for the tournament, and flew in, went to the hotel, got off the elevator, and I saw our chair sitting there kind of shaking her head. And I said, "It's canceled, isn't it?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "It's canceled. If you want to go in the other room, they'll help you book your flight home." So that was really the beginning of kind of athletics world turned upside down. We quickly learned that it's not really easy to shut down an athletics operation. It's really difficult to try to, we had to get our spring sports together and with their head coaches and tell our baseball team that your season's over. We need you to go home, to tell our track student athletes and our golf teams who they had no idea. They were in the middle of competition. They didn't know where to go. Where do you go? Do I go home? They're asking us questions that says, so do we still get our room and board check? Is training table over? All of these questions that we didn't necessarily have answers for. So it was kind of fly by the seat of our pants for a while, and I think that was across the country. But then once our student athletes all were home, for the most part, we wanted them to go home simply because campus was being shut down. We knew that in the community of Manhattan, they couldn't be out and about. There was masking policies. There was all these different protocols in place that it was really going to be best if they did go home, since there really wasn't going to be a support structure here. So once they went home, then, our strength coaches are trying to figure out, okay, can we send them, supplements to keep up their body strength, and can we send them the armbands, and can we send them any type of workout equipment if they can't get to a workout facility? It was everything, and it was all those things that you don't think of, and that you kind of take one baby step at a time. There was some guidance from the NCAA, there was some guidance from the Big 12, but it was mainly collaboration with everyone because no one had any idea. And there was no knowledge of what should be done, what could be done, what did we want to allow, what did we not want to allow. Then you heard of, some universities sending home weight benches and all kinds of things. And it's like, no, we're not going to do that. But
I imagine you found out what kind of team you had at that point.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think we also realized how creative we could be. Our strength coaches were phenomenal. They understood that most student athletes did not have access to a gym because most of them, where they were going, gyms were shut down. So they would have them do full body workouts. They would have them lift the recliners in their living room. They would have them use whatever resources they had available. So I think people really became very creative and kind of understood that we didn't need, really expensive equipment to throw around weights, and that there's other ways to do things.
Sure. You mentioned the Women's Tournament Selection Committee. Can you tell us how you were selected? And it's only 10 people across the country, and I don't know how many colleges, universities there are. How many?
Yeah, there's within Division I women's basketball, there's 354 teams that compete and are eligible for the NCAA tournament.
So, there were a lot of people from which to choose for these 10 slots, and you were one of them. So tell us a little bit about being named to the committee and then your experience with it.
Yeah. The selection process is kind of through your conference office. So through the Big 12 office, they're able to nominate someone and an individual to put a name forward and then it goes to the NCAA nominating committee. So I was fortunate enough to be nominated by the Big 12 office. And part of that, I think, is simply I did have the background with coaching experiences and as a student athlete in women's basketball. And there's not, that many people in administration that have that background. It's just kind of is what it is, I guess. So had the opportunity to be nominated for the committee, and it's a 5-year appointment. So last year was my first year. This was my second year, and we actually got to do a tournament. But it's fun. It's a lot of work. It's probably more work than I ever imagined that it could be, and I think that intentionally don't tell people how much work it's going to be because it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of hours watching a lot of games, which I love to watch games, so that's not too bad for me, probably harder on my husband than it is for me. Um, but a big part of it is being assigned conferences. You're assigned primary conferences and then you're assigned secondary conferences. So I have 4 primary conferences that I'm responsible for that I was this past year, and then three secondary conferences. So those are obviously the main conferences you watch, although you have to watch really most of the teams play, because not only do you do the bracket at the end of the season, you also have top 16 reveals on ESPN twice a year, and you're responsible to submit your vote to seed the top 16 once mid-February and then once the very first part of March. So
You mentioned there aren't many people with your experience. You may not know this number, but I'm curious how many Division I athletic departments have a female operations kind of operations person. Are there many?
Um, each institution has what the role of a senior woman administrator, which is, technically it's your highest ranking senior administrator at each institution. Some deputy ADs have that title, some don't. Some female deputy ADs have that role, and some do not. But I don't know a number on that. But within the Big 12, we have, I think, 3 deputy ADs, 3 female deputy ADs that have the SWA role also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Out of 10.
Yeah.
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 How many have football?
We have within the Big 12, I think there are 2 or 3 of us, that are the football sport administrators. Yeah.
This may be unfair and we can edit it out, but you played basketball. What's your favorite sport? Not necessarily favorite coach and you're on the basketball selection committee. So this may be a dumb question. I personally love football.
Yeah.
Let's take basketball out of it.
Yeah.
What's your second favorite sport to work with?
It honestly would probably be a toss-up between football and volleyball. Volleyball is a sport I grew up playing through high school, but I didn't, being a basketball player, I didn't really watch it beyond that. But as their sport administrator and watching volleyball at this level, it's a pretty impressive sport to watch, and to watch the females play at the level that they play volleyball is pretty phenomenal. And it's such a fast-paced, it's pretty entertaining from a fan standpoint. My son plays football, so I really got hooked in football, even watching middle school, high school. I love watching high school football. And that kind of translated to college, and there's nothing like football game day. It's a lot of fun.
Especially with a view like this.
Especially with a view like this.
We'll have to show the view in a little bit.
But football game day's fun. It's a ton of fun here. It's the whole day, from recruits before the game starts, to the pageantry of the band and tailgating, and then the game and so forth, and then meeting the players after the game and hanging around with parents and so forth. So it's a lot of fun. I enjoy that too.
You mentioned volleyball, and there's been a little bit of controversy with the women's sports and maybe some equity issues with the NCAA. Some of that may have been, when the media is involved, sometimes you don't maybe necessarily get the complete story. But I know with volleyball, there were some folks that were criticizing the NCAA for having a smaller field.
Yeah.
that maybe the facilities without some TV coverage that wasn't fair.
Yeah.
With the women's basketball tournament, which you're obviously very familiar with, there were some concerns that maybe there wasn't equity between the facilities. I mean, you were there, you know a lot about what was going on with basketball, and maybe you have something, some insight on the volleyball situation as well. Can you just tell us a little bit about that specifically, but also where you've seen women's sports evolve from when you were playing as a student
Yeah.
athlete?
Yeah. Well, that was a few years ago that I played. So it's evolved tremendously since then. I think facilities, resources, coaching resources, everything from equipment to equal time on the court to where you eat after the game. It's come a long, long way. Are there still some issues? Yeah, there's still some issues that still need to be addressed. I think with the tournament specifically, I think we forgot that we were still in COVID and operating in the middle of a pandemic. And I think that had to do with a little bit of the perceived inequities. The women's tournament has always been operated in a different format than the men's, with the first and second round games being played at the home sites of the top 16 teams. But this year, when they were operated identically, there probably wasn't enough communication between the men's committee and the women's committee to make sure that they were identical. And again, I think COVID presented some challenges, certainly with, each tournament, with the men's tournament being played in Indianapolis in the state of Indiana, and the women in Texas and San Antonio. There were certainly different health and safety standards for each state. There were different things that we could do from a food perspective. For instance, in Indianapolis, the men's teams could eat buffets and the women's teams could not eat off of buffets simply because of the safety and the health standards from the local county health departments. So there were some different things related to COVID that we probably didn't articulate well enough to the general fan and through social media and so forth. The big thing was the weight room that got out on social media. And no, the women's tournament did not know that the men were going to have a huge weight room. But we also had plans for a weight room once teams got to the Sweet 16 round. And we did that and, kind of corrected that quickly. But I think it was something that, honestly, in the chaos of a pandemic year and trying to put together tournaments quickly, we didn't even have hotel contracts until the middle of February, simply because we didn't know if we were going to be able to have a tournament. San Antonio had been the pre-selected site for the Final Four years ago. I mean, those selections are made out 4, 5, 6 years in advance. But we didn't know for sure if we were going to even be able to have a tournament. So there were a lot of challenges in us having to go to another state, whereas the men were in Indianapolis, where they're all, the staff lives, where the support staff can go look at facilities, do pre-site visits, all of those things we couldn't do in San Antonio. So lots of behind the scenes. There's a lot of layers to it.
Oh, I'm sure.
No one saw.
I'm sure. And so gender equity is one issue. And I know there's been a lot more, well, maybe not more focus, but certainly more focus with the general public on racial equity and diversity issues. Are there things that you all have done at K-State that have been different, or during the time when after George Floyd and those types of things? I know on a lot of campuses the students were more active in expressing their frustrations and things like that and coming together. Were there some things that you did here differently or things that you've done differently, or has it just kind of been part of the process the whole time?
Yeah, it's kind of been a process over the last few years, I would say. I think there's been more not just attention, but I think at K-State we've been more intentional within our athletic department to make sure that we're providing support for our student athletes. Our Black student athletes are extremely important to us, to our teams. There is a transition at times when they move wherever they're coming from to Manhattan, and we've always been very intentional about programming opportunities for them, whether that's mentoring, whether that's, we have a PALS group that's a positioning athletes for lifelong success, where we focus on our Black student athletes with mentorship, with programming and transitioning to a predominantly white institution. So we've been intentional, but I think this past summer, we even, we kind of dive even deeper and really looked even harder at how we're supporting our student athletes. Um, we had some town halls with our student athletes, with all of our student athletes, to let them kind of have an open floor, an open format, and talk about what's bothering them, what they would like to say, to make sure we were listening to them and had the pulse of not only our Black student athletes, but our Black coaches and staff. We've been pretty intentional in hiring. We want our student athlete population, our coaches that are coaching them, and support staff to be as reflective as possible of the makeup of our student athletes, to make sure that our Black student athletes can look around and they can see people that look like them and or have grown up in similar environments, and that's important to us. So we've been pretty intentional with hires. So yeah, I think this past summer we did have a heightened, with the George Floyd, a heightened sense of just what are we doing with our student athletes, and what do they need from us, and do they feel supported, and do they, what do they want from us? We had a march from our ice basketball facility to a Hearn Field House with all of our student athletes, but being led by our Black student athletes, and we had some programming at the end of that, and some of our student athletes had the opportunity to speak, and so did our coaches, and I think that was a really kind of a neat thing that we did at that time. But I think more importantly is kind of, what are you doing on a day-to-day basis, and I think that's more important to us. And I think our athletic director is very out front with our student athletes and very much has an open door to them and what they want, and what type of resources really they need to feel supported and feel successful, not only as an athlete, but once they leave K-State, how are they going to be successful? Or have we positioned them to be employable, to go back to wherever any of our student athletes, their hometowns are, and be employed and be terrific employees. That's really what we're about and what we're striving for.
Well, I would say by anyone's definition, you have been successful in your career. And I'm curious what you would attribute, like what are maybe one or two qualities, and please don't be humble. What has led to your success?
Yeah. I think more than anything, I got into a field that I loved and that I was passionate about. So I think it made it pretty easy. When I got into the student athlete services side, I was very passionate about helping our coaches, helping our student athletes be successful in whatever shape or form that, however that looked. And I think when you're passionate and you care about what you're doing, I think that makes all the difference, because I never really felt like I was coming to work. I felt like I was really, really fortunate to get to do what I love to do on a daily basis. And for me, for a number of years, it was helping students academically be successful. And to me, I loved more than anything watching student athletes graduate. I enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed watching them catch a touchdown pass or win a championship or a big game or anything like that. So I think being passionate about what you are doing. And I think the other thing is just being persistent. There's a lot of, I think in anyone's given field, there's a lot of weeks or months or sometimes even years you wonder, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I doing, where is this leading? Am I making a difference? Am I really helping anyone? But I think just staying persistent, and that was something that Coach Snyder always hammered home, just being persistent day after day, week after week, task after task, and then soon success does follow. And I think I always kind of took that to heart a little bit. Certainly as a working mom, and at the time having two small kids, there were days that I thought, what am I doing? And should I be doing this? But I think, when you take it day by day and you love what you're doing and I think then you can knock it out. But I don't know. I really do think, though, so many people, I think, try to look for a career that they're going to make a lot of money in. And I would hesitate to even tell people what I made my first 3 to 4 to 5 different jobs that I had in athletics and the responsibilities I had, because no one would ever go into college athletics if I, shared that. But I never went into it because of the money. I knew that that's what I wanted to get up every morning and go do. And that was more important to me than the salary and status and those types of things. I didn't care if I had to run across campus and check classes and make sure someone was in class and all those really prestigious roles that came with the job. It was more about just finding something that I love to do.
What advice would you give to someone who thinks they would like to wake up every day and have a career in college athletics, whether it's a coach, administrator? How do you get your foot in the door?
Yeah, I think, what I tell college students, especially, or high school students, I think it's important that once you get to college, you find someone in an athletic department and you articulate to them that you do want to be in college athletics. Because there's so many things, there's so many students that we hire as student workers, whether that's in hospitality or event management or ushers, ticket takers, whatever it might be. There are so many jobs that a student can do while they're in college athletics. So I think it's important to kind of verbalize to someone and to try to find employment while you're in college, so that you can get your foot in the door. For a lot of positions, there's, to be in college athletics, a graduate assistant position is sometimes helpful. So I think sometimes it's being willing to, get your degree and then move on and be in a role as a graduate assistant to really get 2 years of hands-on experience. With our graduate assistants, we give them a lot of responsibility. They're with us in almost a full-time capacity as working towards their graduate degree, but really getting those 2 years of experience, because so many jobs in college athletics that you see, they want at least 2 years of experience. and most understand that that 2 years can be as a graduate assistant. So, I think really letting people know what you want to do, and finding someone that's willing to kind of help you and guide you and mentor you, because there are a lot of people in college athletics that are willing to do that, but sometimes you have to look and you have to put yourself out there and let people know that that's what you want to do.
Okay, well, in conclusion, thank you, Jill, for your time. I'll give you, as much as it pains me as a KU alum, I'll give you 60 seconds to tell a student why he or she should attend Kansas State University.
Great question. I think K-State's a great college town. Manhattan embraces our students. They love the students. It's a community that revolves around the campus. You'll see purple every day, and I think you'll find a lot of people that are passionate about helping our students be successful. And it's a lot of fun. There's a great athletic environment that you can be a part of. There's great support on our campus, and it's a great place to come and be a Wildcat.
And you can hear Wabash Cannonball.
And you can hear Wabash Cannonball.
There you go.
There you go.
Thanks, Jill.